The final speaker, I should say the final speaker who will tell us a little bit more about listening is Dr. Shannon Olsson, Global Director of the ECHO Network, who will join us on stage. Dr. Olsson is a chemical ecologist who listens to nature's chemical conversations across India's diverse ecosystems. I first listened to Shannon in the middle of the pandemic when we came together virtually to come forward with an idea for a more sustainable, greener recovery out of the devastation that we were in. Shannon, looking forward to you closing us off and telling us a little bit more how to listen better to live sustainably.
About 15 years ago, the Washington Post performed a social experiment. Dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap, one of the most celebrated violinists of our time, Joshua Bell, performed solo in the Washington, D.C. metro station during morning rush hour. Over the course of his 43-minute performance, over 1,000 people would have the chance to hear the works of art that emanated from his 300-year-old and $3 million Stradivarius violin. Now, the experiment was simple. How many would stop and listen to a virtuoso in the subway? So I'm going to ask a poll here. How many of you out there thinking about your normal morning commute, if you had suddenly heard the most transcendent musical verses of your life, how many of you would have maybe stopped for a minute and just taken a listen? Raise your hand. Okay. Well, after 43 minutes, only 7 people, less than 0.1% of those travelers stopped for more than a minute. And in fact, only 2% actually left any money in the violin case at his feet. So what happened to the other 98% of the travelers who didn't even glance at one of the most famous violinists in the world? Well, the Washington Post interviewed those travelers later, and actually many of them said they in fact did hear the virtuoso, but they were too preoccupied with their upcoming workday to be able to stop and listen. One person didn't even hear the violin playing because they were wearing headphones, and the shoe shiner that was working right next door actually was annoyed at the music because it was interfering with her workday. And of course, a few of them heard and simply didn't care. Now, this mix of viewpoints actually mirrors our planet's response to the Sustainable Development Goals. We, too, are not taking the time to stop, listen, and engage with those goals. Anthony Leiserowitz, who is head of the Yale program on climate change communication, has surveyed people across the world on their perceptions of climate change. And in both the US and actually right here in India, he has identified 6 groups of people that range from the convinced and the informed to the disinterested and the disengaged. And those 6 groups actually mirror those persons on the subway as well as most of the people on this planet, because many of us are like those bureaucrats in that morning commute. We are too encumbered by other seemingly more important things in our lives than to address any SDGs on a daily basis. And some of us are like that shoe shiner that are so crushed under the weight of disempowerment that we simply cannot listen. And still others are like the person wearing headphones, and we're so far removed from the problem that we can't even identify it. But you see, everyone in that metro had the capacity to appreciate the music, and they said they did appreciate music. Just like we also, if you ask, appreciate the value of the SDGs. We are not ignorant. We're not unaware. We're simply unavailable. Now, Prime Minister Modi unveiled Mission LiFE during COP26 in Glasgow as a collective response with 3 different stages. First, increase demand. by nudging behavior. Second, increase supply by enabling markets. And finally, increase policy for long-term aspirational change. But with 98% of us unavailable, how are we even going to get people to stop, listen, and engage with those stages? Well, first of all, we have to get people to pay attention. And I don't just mean the people on the subway. I mean CEOs. I mean world leaders like yourself, academics like me, and actually all the 98% of the demographic that makes up our planet. And it can't be just by making a lot of noise about the SDGs, because Joshua Bell was making a lot of noise on that morning commute, and still over 1,000 people passed him by. But if a friend or a neighbor or a relative had asked those travelers to stop, they would have been much more likely to do so, because people need people they trust, and people trust people that they know. So we also need to enable community champions in every single community, and honestly in every single home, who are empowered and informed of the latest information on the SDGs. And social innovation organizations across the world, as well as public-private partnerships that bring local organizations and local governments together, are excellent mechanisms for building that capacity, for training, and for empowering local sustainability champions in every community across this world. Now, next, we have to get people to also listen, right? They have to value taking the time and the effort to engage with the SDGs. When the Washington Post actually interviewed the people who did actually stop and listen to the music, many of them had played the violin as children. And some of them actually recognized Joshua Bell to be the celebrity that he was. You see, they had a personal connection with that music. They had a personal value for it. The next stage in life is to enable markets, to foster solutions that connect with public values. But I can tell you, as a scientist, that while many innovations start with people like me in laboratories, not many of those innovations necessarily take public values into account. And that's why we need to start building human-centered innovation that starts by incorporating the public into the scientific process right from the beginning. At the Echo Network, we connect communities with academia and businesses and government and organizations all in the same room to create something known as communities of practice, who learn from each other first and co-develop solutions together, and then iteratively enhance those solutions over time. Now, finally, we have to keep people engaged with the SDGs, not just today, but for the rest of their lives. And Mission Life has identified the role of decision makers and their importance in sustaining those ideas for our collective future. But for the past 50 years, we have presented our future as one in crisis. And in fact, it is a crisis. It is tragic and it is terrifying, and it is, of course, affecting those of us who are the least empowered to address these issues. But fear has never motivated long-term change. Fear causes retreat. It's only hope that can foster long-term action. And I am hopeful, because for the first time in human civilization, we can consider completely new ways of living, new ways of moving, new ways of growing and eating food, new ways of wearing clothing, new ways of building cities, and new ways of living with each other and with our ecosystems. And as a scientist, that excites me, because we don't even have to go to Mars to figure out how to live on another planet. We actually just have to figure out how to live on this one right here. And that's why I moved to India in 2014, because I know that those countries that are most impacted by our changing climate are also the most able to identify discoveries that can sustain it. And I also know, as a scientist in India, that this process starts not here, but here. It starts by investing in people and not just in innovations. I founded the Echo Network because I believe, like an echo, in the power of listening and the power of first listening and then giving back by building trust through local champions, instilling value through human-centered innovation, and creating a sense of responsibility through communities of practice who live that new reality they've created for themselves. So let's start now. Stop, listen, and engage before the train leaves the station. Can you hear it? Our planet's calling for you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. We are not available. What a powerful message. The greatest threat facing humanity is not climate change. It's a lack of empathy of other people, of other colors, of other cultures, of other genders, of other geographies. If we could only listen, maybe we could chart a better way forward.